Talking About Horses, bringing you closer to some of the best horsemen in the world for tips, insights, and stories. Listen at home, at work, in the car, or in the saddle. This is Talking About Horses. Here's your host, Patrick King.
Okay, hey there, gang. Patrick King here, and I want to thank you for tuning in for what's now episode number 41 of Talking About Horses. Today, I'm pleased to be joined again by Charles de Kunffy. Charles can be best described as a gentleman and a scholar, and most importantly, an indomitable ambassador for the horse. Raised in the classical tradition, Charles is a firm believer in schooling the horse in a comprehensive system of training, including cross-country, jumping, and dressage. Charles has also written 6 books on the classical dressage tradition. His experience as a dressage judge, trainer, and author make him one of the most sought-after dressage masters and clinicians today. Charles, once again, thank you so much for joining us here on Talking About Horses.
Well, it's a privilege, and thank you for being invited. I did enjoy it, but I am tonight selecting a very difficult topic to talk about because it's the seat and age,
Yes.
which is like explain the universe in 25 words or less. It's again one of those things. We dealt with the topic of seat and age for 4 years in Riding Academy, and then I have here another 40 minutes, and so I'm going to be sinning by absence of many things that should be said in the next 4 years, but I am just here for a little time. So I am daring the big subject, and I hope my listeners will enjoy learning something more about these essentials tonight. So the original idea had to do also with a question that, what about the range, what about the contact, what about the flexion, and all those things that always come up in bits and pieces. And of course, the answer to all of these is to in an arena where one can demo riders who can demonstrate the positions and the aids, as I call it. In other words, I like to be the soundtrack to a nice movie. And I have made only one video, which is entitled The Art of Traditional Dressage, and it has very detailed and very exacting audio-visual stuff about which I talk now, and so it made me put in my commercial at the beginning of my speech and not at the end of it. And because what if at the end of it people said, "Oh no, I'm not going to consult this man." So anyway, it's the only video I made on this huge subject, and so you might as well know about it. We have to understand that the horse didn't ask us to ride them.
Yes.
And of course, they had a wonderful time until we spotted them and we trained, we tamed them, and then spent some years of trial and error figuring out what are the things that work and what are the things that don't work. And we also discovered that in riding life, there's only right or wrong. There's no neutrality. There's no such thing as wait a minute and I tried my best, which are the favorite phrases people like to use. Don't try your best and don't wait a minute. Get it right. Get it right in your head, because all good riding starts with academic knowledge of the subject. And so riding is a sport for the brain as much as it is for the body. The body is just a communication medium. And as I said, I think I said it even last time at one point, that when we got into the saddle and sat on a horse, we violated his comfortable life by nature, because the horse is structurally not equipped to carry any weight on his back. And when we get on the horse, we have to spend the rest of our lifetime apologizing for having gotten there. And the way we apologize for it is that we discovered in 2000 years, by the advice of millions of riders, saying this worked, this didn't, this injured him, this killed him, this is good for him, this delights him, he's 32 years old and still working well, etc., etc. So we got a huge package of inheritance, which is our duty to discover and make it our own. We are not to invent horseback riding in the classical tradition. It has been invented long before we were born, and of course our duty is to learn it and follow it best of our knowledge, best of our skills. So the curious thing is that we discovered that the horse is totally unharmed and without pain or discomfort if we are riding him in a longitudinal flexion, and the flexion is making that imaginary bow that I think I mentioned last time too, that our duty to bring the horse's hocks closer to the bridle, and the more closer we get to engage him, the more he can shift the balance of his weight, the composite weight of the horse and rider, to the haunches until he's completely gathered under and raises the forehand off the floor to demonstrate that he arrived under two tiny hoofs and immense skills and strength of his joints and articulation of joints, that he can lift like a crane the horse and rider composition off the floor and settle it entirely into the haunches. Now this is of course a knowledgeable and gradual development that we are talking about, but it has all to do with the reason we developed the seat and aids, so that to facilitate this magic of taking a piece of nature and without giving him distress or pain or discomfort, we can elevate him to a monument of art. So it is, of course, our communication with horses is very difficult, not just because of the difference in intellect and ability to analyze or not analyze. Of course, horses cannot analyze, but because we are asking a weird thing, namely a vertical weight vector composition called seat, is to control a totally horizontal pipe, which is much heavier in the front. And so imagine yourself holding a cane or a riding whip or an aluminum pipe that is 30 feet long, and you hold it on one end. Guess where the other end is? Drilling in the ground.
Yes.
Because the other end has fallen down and makes a furrow on the ground because you are holding one end of it. But that's our riding. We have one end of the horse is the only source of locomotion and the only source of the longitudinal flexion, which make his physique pliable, addressed to absorb the locomotion of the haunches and conveyed to the forehand, the terminal point, the termination point of the bridle, about which very much will be said in the near future here. So let's go back to the vertical aspirant and horizontal horse, and how do you integrate the balance and motion of these two utterly opposite structures, unlikely creatures, and create a unity that is, of course, forever in harmony and lightness, because of the correct management of evolution, of this magic of uniting the vertical with the horizontal unimpaired. This should produce a seat that I'm not aware who else uses this terminology, but I always think of it as the integrated seat. It's more than what the books say. The books always say you want to have a balanced, adhesive seat to produce independent aids. Bravo. One more step. When you have that wonderful thing, make sure it becomes better by having the skill to integrate all your movements and all your moment-to-moment, step-to-step balance on the horse's back, so that the horse thinks that you disappeared and you became his eyeball and spine and his kidney and his hoof. You become part of his structure because you are no longer a burden, because your balance is absolutely synchronous with the horses. And of course, it takes the skills of having constantly isometric tone without tension. And that's a very big demand on the rider. Who teaches this kind of riding? How many hours of lunging did you have? How many years of lunging did you have?
Right.
How was it explained to you by sculpting you on sitting on a horse and somebody getting over there and putting your leg position where it ought to be and showing you what the shoulder, meaning the shoulder being straight, etc. What are these words meaning? So the seat has to develop and evolve and you don't see it often because we are losing the uniformity of education of what it means to become a rider. It should start on the lunging tape and last in the Spanish riding school and other places, even 18 months of lunging non-stop. You don't get the reins. You are not getting the privileged parts of the horse at all. You are to make your seat and torso and verticality integrate to the horse, and when it's done, accomplished, you get control of your horse's haunches and incidentally forehand as well. Now then,
that sounds pretty easy, right? So,
oh yes.
so you're saying the balanced seat, the coordinated seat that we read about in books, that's great, but that's just the first step. We need the integrated seat beyond that.
Yes, the integrated is way beyond that, because the adhesive seat that liberates your limbs to actually deliver aids, because you can say drive more with the left leg, but if you don't sit in balance, you really cannot liberate your left leg to, the left leg becomes a victim of the shock of being on a horse.
Oh, sure.
So yes, it's a big step beyond, and of course it's quality. It is, but it is the only thing that permits you to train your horse to the top of his capacity in a painless way. And we owe it to the horse to acquire this knowledge. We are not playing. The horse is not a chair on which you sit to have a smoke. You don't sit on horses. They're not armchairs.
Right.
When you are part of a horse, you are composed in mind and physique to be an integrated partner of his mindset, his physical comfort and liberty. And that's what our job is. So then, okay, back to the word I want to use always. The seat is not where the seat bones are on the saddle. In other words, the seat is not in the breeches. The seat is you totally from the top of your head down to your knees, but only to your knees. It's all seat, from knee to heel, or knee to ankle, knee to toe. That is not part of the seat. That is a chatterbox that communicates to the horse. Now then, when I say the seat is a transformer, is very important to understand that only an integrated seat, a sophisticated, knowledgeable rider, feels that energy is supplied by the horse's haunches, and that you are in charge of how much and when and where and in what manner. In other words, you are controlling the haunches enough to allow the energy of the horse to flow up through your straight spine all the way to the top of your head, and you return it isometrically, and by changing minuscule aids on top of the horse, minuscule balance changes, you bring the same energy back and down into the saddle, and for now, the best words is to modify all movement of the horse. So we ride with seat and legs and reins, and I try to shine on each a little more in detail. So the seat is the modifier. The legs energize, but they do more than energize, because, well, energize is the major function of the legs and the leg aids, because of course we cannot ride a horse, we can only ride his energies. It's all about motion, what we are about to do. It's controlled transportation, but you have to know how to control not just where we go, but how we go. So now back to the seat is the transformer. The energy brings down back into the saddle, and it modifies what the horse is asked to do. When the legs energize, they also take up the role to displace and herd and engage the horse. Engagement is a huge topic, only worth a year of discussion. And so when you are ready for a year of engagement discussion, we can make some. But anyway, the displacing and herding is easy to understand.
Yes.
Your legs are asked to make a shoulder in or a haunches in. This is, you don't change the track of motion, you don't change the direction of motion, but you change displacing the shoulders and the haunches according to necessities of your plans, your gymnastic wisdom. Herding means that you do change, you change the direction of your progress. So a half pass is herding.
Okay.
But the shoulder in is just displacing. So you have to know these concepts, because each movement we now use in modern times, we inherit it because it works. And you have to know how to do it absolutely correctly, and which one to choose when your horse has a left hind leg stiffness or weakness problem, and you should know the entire availability of how to herd, displace, and engage. And the last accessory we have is the reins. They verify. So legs energize, seat modifies, reins verify. This is absolutely omitted in contemporary teaching for some reason, which is to me a nightmare, because we have the reins are not there for us to pull, and I conduct my little interview. Who contacts? The horse, not the rider. What does the rider do? Presents the beat. And I'll talk about that in a minute. This presents the beat. And why do we have, and it's not pulled against his gums and
Yeah.
fast and shapes the neck. No, it hangs because we ride with the leather reins, the ring of the bit. We don't ride, that's why the bit is jointed in the center, and that's why we have rings on it. Did anybody ever ask that? Why do we have rings? Because that's what we contact. That's what we present the bit with this ring, and he contacts it. And what does he contact the bit with? Not his mouth. His mouth is for eating and drinking. He contacts it with his hocks. The hocks are joint flexion for transportation. It is the hocks that bring the horse from A to C, and the rest of the joints are just decorative value. It's a joke. It's supposed to be a joke. The rest of the joints are there to accommodate the horse's horizontal functions through space, but the transportation is the hocks. So when we talk about contact, it's hocks to bridle. You don't hang onto the mouth and water ski the rest of your life. You sit down, integrated seat, a perfected seat, and you control the horse with your seat. And the reins are to verify because they are the extension of your seat, and they are part of your torso. In a moment, I'll explain that too more in detail. But the function of the reins is two. One, it helps in a major way the horse's alignment. That means bending and spinal alignment over the pattern on which we move. The reins are very necessary for that. And the second necessity of reins is that they yield to verify every time the horse does something. So we are walking and preparing the horse at A, canter, left lead. The moment he strikes the first canter, immediately we yield. And I will explain on which side you yield or which side you don't and what determines that. But yield you must. And you yield your age so that the following canter strikes are not the same strength of age and finesse prepared age as the first one was. So departure to canter is a different conversation with the horse than stay in the canter.
Okay.
Or collect that canter. But all of this is verified by immediately yielding. So, okay, when you teach the yielding of the rein, you demand the student to do sometimes full yield. The full yield is that you extend your yielding arm on that side all the way straight forward at the elbow, your fist pointing, or even if you want to touch it, the crest of the horse's neck, and then gently lower your fist and lower arm and draw it back until the elbow is under your shoulder blade. But this is the full yield. But when you yield every time the horse does something you asked for, you yield to verify that he got it. The horse is not Albert Einstein. He monitors pleasure with pain versus pain. So when you teach a horse, when he canters from a halt or from a walk, you congratulate him by yielding even tiny 1 centimeter. These things don't have to be visible. In fact, they should be visible, except people who don't have good guidance for the seat will have restlessly bouncing, horrifying hands, and none of which I am saying will make sense to them because they can't even control where their fist is and what it's doing. But when you finally do have your age on a correct seat, why, you yield every time. And this is the principle that we teach horses, not by brutality and force, beat him between his ears or whatever. None ever punish. The whip is not for punishment, it's to aid so the horse understands the leg aids attention. Now then, the yielding of every time the horse satisfies your wish is a constant process of conversation with the horse. I see some riders who cannot let go and will not tell the horse. So when the horse canters out of a walk, what if he does that because he's bolting? But if you didn't ask for it, well, then you yield. Then you hold the presentation of the bit. That's called passive resistance. You don't fight. You just lock yourself down into a deeper seat and say, listen, baby, balance up. So the thing is, if you don't use the reins to yield and congratulate and verify your horse, he will never be sure of your aids. Never. He will guess at it. Oh, maybe he wanted a canter. Oh, maybe he wants to break into a trot. No, you tell him, and you do it with your seat, and you seat and leg, and you verify with the reins. So now I come to even a more complicated thing to talk about without demo riders or without the visual, but try to understand what I'm saying or ask a question in between. I'm glad to answer, because these are complex and important things.
Yes.
So what we have to understand is to integrate our seat with the horse. We understand the following. The seat, the horse's movements are in three dimensions, three entirely different dimensions that you must absorb and be in charge of with your seat. The number one dimension, forward progress over the land. When you do that, your torso weight, the straight torso, the shoulders back and down, the straight spine, and the most important thing, the upper arm and elbow is part of your cabinet and rib cage. It's not separate, and in front of you, it's back. And you see every picture of a reputed rider from the 19th century to our day, where their elbows and arms are, and you will be amazed compared to what you see today in competitions. And so the point is that the first dimension is longitudinal. You cannot be directly above the seat bone, or God forbid in front of it, or fluff around with a bouncing seat bruising the horse's back. Particularly a lot of incorrect seats are visible even in the canter, and it's terrifying because most riders, in a way, ride a quote-unquote posting canter. They leave the saddle, they pitched up, and they crash back down into the horse's back. It's a nightmare. You should be massaging the saddle with your seat bone, and your buttocks should be absolutely blended into the saddle, not knowing where you end and the saddle begins. You have no business leaving the saddle each canter stride. Now then, okay, so that's the horizontal blending into the movement, but there's a vertical bounce, more than bounce, because it's an impaction on the ground. That's like a sledgehammer. The horse, with correct advancement in gymnastics, will be softer and softer and softer as he progresses in the strength and elasticity in his joints. But basically, all horses on all levels have lateral up and down bounce because of our horses' impaction on the ground. Hammers us from below with great power, and we have to absorb that power too, in the same places, we understand to control the progression forward. So horizontal forward and vertical blending down into the adhesive seat are absorbed in the lumbar back and in the ankles. You hardly ever see correct ankle position and the absorption of the vertical impact of the horse. And it should be taught from day one to the rider. And then the third dimension is absolutely not mentioned, is boycotted. It's, oh boy, it must be controversial. No, it's not. It's not controversial. It's scientific, ancient knowledge. Every correct rider uses it. And the third dimension is laterality. The horse doesn't hop around like a kangaroo or a sparrow on two legs hopping. No, he goes right, left, right, left, right, left.
Yes.
And in the canter, a lead to back, a lead to back, a lead to back. And so the horse moves shoulder to shoulder, hip to hip, hock to hock, totally side to side, laterally. All movements in the horse, all gaits are lateral action. Nobody has seen hopping horses except in jumping when we teach that for the takeoff. Now then, what do we do to integrate with this darn thing called laterality? Well, we have a torso which should be sculpted and shoulders back and down, upper arms and elbows absolutely vertical down. We ride with three pillars: left arm, spine, right arm. Three pillars. You look at the horse, the rider from behind, arm, body, arm. And the arms are vertical and down and motionless. And that connects the horizontal kinetic energy and thrust into the rider from underneath him as the horse steps under his elbows and shoulders, because the vector, the weight vector is precise. And then the horse's shoulders go right, left, right, left. When you teach it on the lunge line, you make the rider go right, left with the torso rotating. You swing them. They have to swing themselves. Right, left. When the right shoulder goes back, the right seat bone doubles the drive. The left shoulder swings back. Of course, by definition, it makes the right shoulder lead. But the laterality, the stay in unity, when a horse is in a half pass left in the trot, which shoulder leads? The left shoulder. Left, right, left, right. You have to follow the horse. We had hours of lessons in the precise motion. And then each lesson, the emphasis was, when you have that skill, nobody can see it because it's not visible. You do your lateral rotation with the horse inside your riding jacket. It's not visible. It's not to show off to 5 judges that you are a clumsy old klutz who cannot rotate with the horse and the company. The rider's shoulder has to parallel the horse's shoulder. The rider's hip has to parallel the horse's hip. So that is the three-dimensional seat, and it has the length, the height, in other words, horizontal, vertical, and lateral rotation with the horse. And that already defines 90% of what the reins do. You don't do anything to the reins. You rotate your torso, left shoulder back, right shoulder forward. Your right rein went ahead 2 to 4 inches, and your left rein stayed where you started the rotation. The left doesn't pull back. It stays where you are on the left seat bone, left shoulder back. It stays put. The right one rolls forward slightly. Hence, the positioning of the horse's neck and the positioning of his entire spine is already defined by the rider. Just by integrating yourself in all three dimensions and not pretending that you ride a kangaroo who hops. So then the wrong arm position, which is now thought or even tolerated or thought is unfathomable to my mind, is of course dismantles the seat. And then it's, oh, well, the seat cannot go, we have to pull a little bit, we have to, chuck him in the mouth or something. No, you don't have to do any of those things, because if you know that how to enter and stay put inside the horse's movement, you really have control with your seat. So the feeling is when the horse is ridden from the seat correctly like this, the horse gives you a feeling on both sides, even contact, complete ambidexterity, and he also understands the smallest age you give him regarding collection, engagement, and bending. So now we come to the point of why do we need all these incredible, complex, and hard to gain and hard to get principles? What on earth is this good for? Very simple. Horse is a piece of nature, and nature wants to take a nap for 3 months. You never see a river flow uphill. Rivers are flowing downhill.
Yeah.
Because nature will not accept resistance and will not accept stress. So you sit on the horse and say, oh, you nasty old thing, that's too bad news for me, because I am nature. I don't want to engage. I'll hollow my back. I go above the bit. I different several groups of muscles in my body, and I'm going to chug along with my hind legs way out behind, but I'm going to locomote and tear around without you controlling, because I will have only one kind of energy, kinetic energy. So I use my kinetic energy to give you a hellish ride. I'm upside down, goodbye. Or I am behind the vertical, which is now a great favorite. By the way, a horse behind the vertical is not controlled in engagement by the rider because it's physiologically impossible. It separates the cervical ligament from the skull of the horse and kiss you goodbye. So yes, you can chug along all you want for the rest of your 10 years on the horse behind the vertical. You never engaged him. You are basically riding him like a carriage horse with an invisible buggy. Carriage horses can go behind the vertical and do because they pull. They don't carry, they pull. Very different structurally.
That's a really great way of thinking about that and describing that. I really like that.
Oh, it's absolutely nasty, because then the more they agitate, the rider doesn't get engagement, it gets caught up. So the horse opens behind the saddle, the hind legs go further out behind and begin to hit the floor with great aggression, driving invisible nails into the sand, and he is kicking at the floor with the butt bouncing up vertically. So that rider behind the bit is not integrating his verticality into the magic of the horizontality of the horse. Not at all. He curves the horse he cuts him off at the front, and the horse is agitated with cruel legs or spurs, and he answers the agitation by increasing his aggression on the ground, trampolining into the ground, bouncing his butt up. So instead of folding under like in a piaffe or a pirouette and lowering all his joints towards the ground behind the saddle, he opens his joints, straightens his hocks, refuses the stifle to go forward, only upward, and the horse is in this ridiculous circus trampoline behind the bit, going into oblivion. So then, okay, so back to, where was I? So the rider is to integrate the entire torso and its motion with the horse for the following reasons. We have to do from green to all the way to evergreen, and all the horses have to go through first restoration or rehabilitation work. We have to rehabilitate the three gates under the alien weight of the rider to perfection, and the foundation of all future progress based on the clarity, balance, and rhythmic evenness of the basic gates, and that is what we have to rehabilitate. Now you can see magazines, and they have pictures of the winners of each class, training level class, fourth level class, St. George class, whatever. They picture the great honorable winner of this magnificent contest. Well, there is the magazine with some 35 pictures or whatever, and half of them are in a false gate. They not only take seriously the evolution of the gates into what's called the amplification of the gate, and the amplification of suspension, and the amplification of use of flexible joints to propel the horse forward. But you see the winner's picture with 1 foot on the ground and 3 in the air. What gate is that? It doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. So you already ruined the horse. And you want to go to Olympics? That's all you really. You ask riders, what do you want? I want to be an Olympic rider. Yeah, so would I. So would anybody. But how about trying to deserve the Olympic riding? I have been gate, so the horse is not suffering. How about that?
Right.
And then the same in the canter pictures, and very seldom, I mean like once a year, you see finally a photo where actually all the legs are in the air. The horse is not acting the ground, because in the canter and the trot there is such a momentum, but not in the modern trot. The suspension of the diagonal pairs hitting the ground in synchron, and the suspension in between the change of diagonal pairs is not photographable because it doesn't exist. The trot is a dead run. The trot is like a hamster going across a field. The body doesn't participate. The balance is lost, and it's irregular. So there are no 4 feet in the air. Forget it. Now, so therefore I go to the next stage. So okay, rehabilitation of the clarity of gaits under the rider. Number 2, therapeutic work. This is the most complex and almost the entire protocol of what we are to do every day. The rehabilitation is that we are born right-handed or left-handed and good news is so are the horses. And our job, because in nature, without the weight on his back, living right-handed or left-handed, congratulations. But the moment your weight is in the saddle, don't you dare. Your job is to create ambidexterity, strengthen up the weaker side, establish the even contact, etc., etc. Guide the horse with the controls you have, and of course, another year would be to explain that all horses escape on the right shoulder and what you should do with the right hand and what the meaning of the indirect rein on the right, and all of that is another topic. But therapeutic work to ambidexterity is the reason why we do constantly monitor the horse's spinal flexion to be always evenly over the pattern on which he moves. So we call a horse bent exactly on the 20-meter circle a straight horse. And of course, because he is functionally straight. So in rehabilitation, straighten your horse, drive it forward to create even locomotion on each hind leg. Most people drive only the left and ignore the right, which begins to cross. And number three, the hind leg has to strike the ground in the exact direction of front leg on that side. Most horses short step and hitch on left hind leg and drive much lower and much longer with the right hind leg across. The right hind leg is in a late yield, crossing towards the left front, and it should never do that. And the rider should know how to correct that, but I won't tell you. It's top secret. Because these are major concepts. We studied these things for months in riding school. And here I'm supposed to explain it in 6 minutes. But it's terrifying to me because it should be understood by well-schooled people. So, okay. So the therapeutic work is immense. And then finally, the gymnastic work towards the major goals of amplification of the purest states and maximum performance with minimum effort and perfect harmony with an integrated rider under all gaits, whether it's maximum collection or maximum extension and anything in between. And why do we do this shoulder in and that hunches out and this and that? Because these are the instruments of our toolkit. We have two toolkits to communicate and train with our horses. Number one, the skills of the rider. Number two, the patterns. So he's running, he's out of balance, he's crooked like mad, escaping out on the right shoulder, and is torquing his pelvis to the left. Oh my God, what am I to do? Do a 10-meter circle. So when your riding skills fail you, when you cannot even up the horse's stride with your skills, take the help of a circle, and so on and so on. What I'm trying to illuminate is that we do these exercises not because we are bored. We do them because they work. But if you don't know work for what, you will never address it. You have to work for ambidexterity. And that's when this horrible modern thing, inside leg to outside rein, is an enormous mistake. It doesn't happen. Horses don't have ambidexterity who are ridden like that, because the inside leg to outside rein is wonderful if you are on an 8-meter circle left. But if you do that on an 8-meter circle right, you double the criminality of your horse. You make him so crooked and so uncontrolled in the haunches, the croup bounce is 4 inches higher. So this inside leg to outside rein might work in some situations, but for God's sake, drop it. Don't think of it this way. It's not a recipe book. Riding a living thing is not a recipe. You want ambidexterity. And whether you need, how do you do inside leg to outside rein when I ask you to do a half pass left?
Sure.
Right. A half pass left with your left leg and right rein. Come on.
Right.
You take the right leg. Of course, for God's sakes, of course. And do you need that exercise? Yes, it's for ambidexterity.
Yes.
So, so these things are to be changed or improved, or what you should know about it as riders, because there's a whole world of good things out there, and you are supposed to practice them. And the entire training protocol is based on these ideas that horses always, when they are green and they show their nature, they immediately tell you, I evade engagement by being above the bit or below the bit on overflexion.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you are not correctly bowed in the top line from hock to bridle. You are falsely bowed. Number two, I am crooked and I intend to stay that way because I don't like you on my back. And number three, I evade all your aids by running like hell. And now we teach riders to run the horse faster.
Yes.
And this is number one enemy. Speed is the enemy of impulsion.
Yes.
The racehorse has no speed. Absolutely not. The racehorse can win the race, but he never showed impulsion. So impulsion, engagement, is based on slow him down.
Mm-hmm.
That your leg stimulates, but not running away from it.
Right.
And then you arrive at the end to the majestic passage, floating through air with incredible elasticity and grandeur, and he's very, very slow, but is he engaged? Yes.
Yes.
And when you chase a horse around, you ruin his gait, you cause irregularity, you displace his balance, you ruin his joints, you become choppy, tight, complete opposite of dressage demands.
Mm-hmm.
Stiff, tense, agonized, frightened, full of pain.
Right.
And he can't balance because you never did the therapy of straighten your horse before you ride it forward. Riding forward is not speed. Ride forward is to make a shorter bowstring to bring the hocks closer to the bridle. Slow down.
Right.
To riding forward. Oh, but I'm riding forward. No. Slow down is
Right.
the riding forward.
Well, and that's where we talk about building the strength as well. You know, the idea of more forward that we seem to hear all the time, or we see at least, is counter to the idea of building muscle anyway. If we think about a person going to the gym, you don't speed through the exercises. The slower you go, the more you build the muscle.
Absolutely. And you phrased it exactly correctly. This is exactly what happens. Only the slow motion is really profitable in our art. Anything done fast is not our art. So it's a misunderstanding of form ahead of what is it? Oh God, I'm getting old. One should have always content defining form and not form imitating content. Oh, we want a big round neck. Let's put him behind the vertical and he will munch on his chest. No, that is form put ahead of content. That horse is being killed in his haunches and the content is zero. So the rider has to know that only correct content is beautiful.
Yes.
In beautiful ride, beauty in riding is not how photogenic it is, it's how correct it is.
Yes. And
So,
Charles, if I might interrupt us here, we just had a question come in that I think is going to fit perfectly here. Linnea has asked a question about how do you find the balance between enough forward to be using the body correctly without rushing? And now my thoughts based on the conversation that we had last time, I'm drawn back to what you discussed as being the rhythmic profile of the horse. Is that right?
Yes, you are right. And also the adhesive and integrated sheet can define the rhythm of the horse very much, and even the level of correction, because on the vertical, again, it would be easy to demonstrate in an arena, but if you answer the horse's vertical swing of the back, as we said, the three dimensions, lengthen and the vertical and then the lateral. So if you start to use what you could do as you sit in an auditorium, you can jump up and down on the foam rubber seat of your bar stool or something. So in the horse too, if your verticality is really well done and you don't become a hollow back false vertical, but you are correct, your seat gives the horse the exact tempo, and then of course you harmonize it with the what the leg is. Sometimes the leg asks for a little more speed. You can get it, but with more swing on the horse's back as he transmits the energy. So the seat is, and then of course the laterality. If you want to slow down, you pivot or rotate above the waist, the rib cage and the upper arm, rotate to slow and balance the horse down. And I think did I answer her? Not yet, because what did she ask in this question? There was something else.
She was asking, how do you find the balance between the forward being enough to use the body correctly but not rushing?
Yes, and it's very easy because the horse becomes like what we call the warm back. Most horses you sit on are rigid in the back because they carry you with the back muscles, which is a mistake. The horse should carry you with the abdominal grid, which is an X. It's like two muscle groups in a letter X, crossing from one side to the other, and that should lift the belly and the rib cage of the horse up and kind of bow and haunch on top under the saddle. So the horse would raise you and the saddle up as he comes more engaged under by changing his body position in motion. The horse can change his body in motion. That's how he survives. So when you can induce that with your seat and leg harmonizing, you can slow the tempo and show him. We also have to over slow horses. Get me the slowest trot without becoming a jog. It has to be a trot, but the slowest. I want to keep it until you feel that something changed under the saddle.
Yes.
And it's so obvious, no rider misses that. And I slow them down, they say, oh my God, I never felt that. The back is swelling and dropping and swelling and dropping, and a wonderful floating feeling, and I'm in control of his speed and output. So, but there was another question. Yeah, we can return to this if there's a follow-up question, but I had a question before this session, and somebody asked, when you go half past left, do you sit on the left seat bone and make the horse step under you to be sure he doesn't lose balance, or do you lean way out to the right and push with your seat bone and pelvis the horse onto the left wall? So which way, which seat bone do you travel on a half past left? Well, I tell you, there's a very simple answer, but not easy to habituate and do.
Okay.
And that is that all riding has to be done with the outside leg further back than the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And outside leg reserved to close the horse behind the saddle by keeping him underneath you and not letting him elongate his hind end backwards out to a longer horse, but to stay compact. The outside leg should be even on a 20-meter circle, much behind knee and thigh, and toe up and heel down, and no ballerina posturing, toes up, heels down, stretched leg, staying on the horse. It's a constant draping against the horse's rib cage with the outside leg, keeping the horse correctly bent and positioned for the movement. And because we have to do it all the time when we bend the horse, the answer is ready. You, of course, sit on the left seat bone on half past left because your right leg is back. And it has to be, and you have to be on the inside seat bone on the circle, on the haunches out, which is, of course, the inside circle is on the physical outside. But what I mean is, once you put outside leg back, as you should, and I do it for my riders all time and again, I have to walk, and because they don't do it with enough, how should I say, the leg should not slip and get the knee forward and up again. Once you put it back the right way, it stays there, curiously enough. And the inside leg is responsible for energizing.
Yes.
The impulsion, the rhythm, the tact comes from the inside leg. Talk, 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 more. And the outside leg just keeps it closed behind you.
Okay.
So the horse can escape by swiveling out and going like a sail around the lighthouse.
Right.
Bend around the lighthouse. He cannot swing out like a sailboat.
Right. Okay. Now, when we talk about the legs and we talk about the legs to energize, to displace, to herd, to engage, a question that comes up for me, and maybe it comes up for lots of riders, and it's something that I see a lot, is how much leg? We hear the idea all the time of more leg, more leg, more leg, more leg. When we talk about adding the leg, it would seem to me that just more leg, more leg, more leg would just end up dulling the horse, and at the very least cause him to brace back against us.
Correct. So you let the horse slow down, and then a sudden surprise hug with both legs, whoop, on the rib cage. And then he kind of hustles forward 2-3 steps, and then he peters out again and goes to a coma. And then you give him a whoops again. And so he comes to the horse.
So the leg would be enough in an instant to wake him up, and then it would, I don't want to say retreat, but it would stop acting.
Yeah. Of course, it will dissipate until it's habituated. And when the horse learns that he should change his behavior, including his tempo of movement, only with your permission and when you ask for it, then this will not happen. The whole concept of self-carriage is based on this, and the concept that the Grand Prix horse should never change gait, tempo, posture, or anything, because self-carriage on the highest level is a documentation that the horse is waiting for change by the rider. It's not initiating. Horse should not be trained to be proactive, only reactive.
Okay.
You tell him it's medium trot and not canter. You tell him. And he should wait for that message. And that comes with sophistication of correct training protocol for 6 years.
Yes.
And then you reward him, as I said, you yield on the rein immediately when he delivered. And you told him medium trot, and he begins to float through the air like a great grandeur, you already soften a centimeter on the rein and tell him that he's a genius.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
then he will always listen to your age. But you are right, when a horse gets very tall, if he's constantly changed, and the horse getting rapid to escape that horrible spur or leg is going to, of course, ruin his gaits. His gaits
Yes.
will become choppy, stiff, and understriding. Many horses on high level, the trot is not reaching with the hind legs into the hoof print of the front leg,
Right.
and it's on. And of course, in medium and extended trot, the hind leg has to reach past the footprint of the forehand on the same side, and you don't see it time and again, and yet the grade is very complementary. In other words,
Right.
medium trot with hind legs stepping actually shorter, like he would in a correct collected trot, but this is false collection. He cannot go forward because he's impaired by the reins. So he should step way past the footprint of the forehand, and if he doesn't, a judge should give a 4. It's not satisfactory. 5 is satisfactory, and 8 is good. I mean, does he deserve an 8? No. He should go home and learn why he got a 4. He got a 4 because he doesn't have a medium trot.
Right.
So we have to know what we are supposed to do and evaluate according to that. And so did I answer? Yes, I think I said enough about that. Outside leg must always be back, which is the consequence of which is that you are always on the inside seat bone, and it's a must because the horse's spine, this is what we humans don't experience because we are not horizontal and we are not on 4 legs. We have no idea of the hardship of how to carry weight on the wrong seat bone because it impairs the entire muscle and ligamental structure on that side. So it's a very important, it's a must-have skill that riders should ride with the outside leg back and stretched down and keeping the horse closed. So that should be a major issue with riders. Yeah, okay. So what else? Any last minute?
Perfect.
Need?
Gosh, no,
Then
this sounds good. We haven't had any more questions come in since that one, and that's fantastic right there. That was a great. I think that was a lot for everyone to think about, but I think that's a great answer to talk about that.
Yes, I hope they will react and tell you if they found it important or beneficial or what, you know, whether it was relevant to their world of training and riding and all of that stuff.
Yes.
And I have to tell that I have a website. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Tell us first about your salon. I've seen there was an email that went out about that, promoting a conversation that you just recently had with, was it Carl Eichenar?
No, Hausberger.
Yes.
Yes, no, you are right. It was called, since then I recorded another one with Andreas. So
okay.
I have all those, I think there are 3 put on the salon every week or every 2 weeks. I forgot how many, but they are all conversations and interviews and things like that.
Perfect. And that can be found through your website, correct?
Yes, it's all on my website.
Perfect. Good.
Which is what, charlesdekunffy.com.
That sounds right. Yeah, that sounds good. And I'll make sure also that we link that in the comment section here, also on the live videos. That's fantastic. So if there was, Oh, how do I link that? I would just copy the website and post it in one of the comments here.
Oh, right. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So Charles, if there was, and this is just going to come from me, a question from me here. If there was one specific thing, and I know there's probably many, but if there was one specific thing that you'd recommend for riders to focus on as a means of improving their seat, because I know we talk so much about the aids are a direct result of the integrated seat, what would be that thing that you would recommend?
Well, it's very easy. It's self-lunging. In other words, doing things, lunging always does for others, but namely two things. Ride every other day without stirrups, because it is a match for the integration of seat and creating the isometric tone of your body. It's a must-have. No stirrups every other day.
Every other day.
Days with a stirrup are necessary for only your knee to heal. That lower leg is in trouble if you don't occasionally return to the stirrup and the elasticity of your ankle. But ride without stirrup every other day. The other thing you must do is lean behind the vertical to acquire the seat that is integrated into the horse's movement through his body and back, because we are surfing. Riding is a horizontal surfing activity. You have to lean way back to learn. You don't stay behind the vertical for the Olympic ride. And in the warm-up arena, somebody will say, sit up vertical, you know. But prior to the Olympic test, you better be behind the vertical until you are integrated seat.
Until you're integrated. And I've heard you say in the past that maybe an ideal measurement for that, or a common measurement for that, you're talking something like 20 degrees. Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah. So the maximum is 45. A lot of lunging is done leaning back 45 degrees, and of course the sit-ups in motion is horrendous. You lean back and then start to approach your vertical, so you go a little bit towards the vertical, lean back again, so you keep getting sit-ups on a moving horse.
Okay.
But you have to build abdominal muscles, abs of steel with lumbar swing, and you learn it only by experiencing it. There's no recipe book. You go behind the vertical. All lunging, you have seen and there are lots of movies and films and everything. All lunging is behind the vertical. How can you bicycle up and down with your knees if you are not vertical? You can't do any exercise in the vertical. All lunging is behind the vertical, even the arm extensions. You have to be in complete control of your arms and their weight. So anyway, that's what I recommend, the two things to do. No stirrups and stay behind the vertical for quite a while until you got it down tap.
Perfect. Well, that's fantastic. So those are two actionable steps that all of our listeners can use to improve their seat, to improve then the communication through their aids. So.
Yes, and to understand that these things, because of course the word will be, it's so controversial, we have to ride vertical, and Mr. de Kunffy insists we go behind vertical. Yes, learn the idea that the means must be different than the ends which you want to accomplish.
Yes.
You don't get off by spanking a horse in a spot. In other words, the means to get piaffe is 6 years of doing everything but piaffe.
Yes.
And then, lo and behold, on a Tuesday morning, you have piaffe. It's the same with the seat. Of course, we have to sit vertical, but you have to earn it. You have to get it. And that's behind the vertical.
Perfect. Yes, I've heard you say before, and I know I wrote it down several times when I've heard you say it, that the means to the goal are different than the goal themselves.
Yes. Very different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. which makes perfect sense. And then it happens, as you said, it happens organically because of everything else that you've done along the way, because of the preparation and the horse's understanding, complete understanding then of the aids.
Yes, and having the strength and the skill to deal with it. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Perfect. Perfect. All right.
Thank you. Thank
Well, this is fantastic, Charles. This has been another fantastic conversation. I thank you very much. Any last thoughts? I'll tell you what, something that I do oftentimes when I have a guest on, we didn't do this last time, but maybe I'm going to throw the ball in your court. We've got lots of questions that folks have been asking you and that I've been asking you. Something I like to do with our guests is have the guests ask a question of the audience. And that's something that they can then ponder and they can reply in the comments section of the videos. Would there be a question you could think of that you'd want to ask all of our listeners that they can then reply to?
Yes, of course. One of the key questions is, do you know the actual goals of classical horsemanship? What on earth do we want to teach the horse a canter backwards, or what are our goals? What do we bother about? What is the daily bother? And very few people can answer that correctly. And the tragedy is that if you don't know where you are going, you always arrive. And your narcissistic conceit itself always thinks you are the greatest because you don't know where you are supposed to go. So whatever you produce, you think arrived. You know, it's kind of a very false egotism.
Yes, yes.
But you have to know basically what we are after. I mean, why do you want to have an ambidextrous horse? You know, what's in your mind?
That's fantastic. I love that question. What are the goals of classical horsemanship? And that sounds to me like a great topic for another discussion at some point. What do you say?
Oh, that's scary. Well, it's the topics that you select and you.
Well, you know, you're going to get sick of me. If you said so many of these topics are going to take a year to discuss, you're going to be sick of talking to me after a year.
Yes, because these are all topics that take a long time to sink in, and I'm always so worried about people misunderstanding it and oh God, I don't know, but I guess it's better to know a little than to don't know the whole question. I don't know, but my only problem is, as I said, that these are very big. It's basically what the whole riding is all about. The whole art is all about that.
Yes.
You know, but if people don't know, you know, it's a very complex art that we are involved in. And,
yes, for sure.
And there's no 10-minute remedy or 10-minute advice. It's much too big.
Right.
But
right.
yes, we can do something like that. But maybe you will get some comments or some questions, and then based on those, you can have a new topic, something.
Mm-hmm.
But let them have a chance to choose, maybe.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. So discussion with Charles de Kunffy, listener's choice. That sounds great.
Yes.
That sounds perfect.
Yes.
All right. All right. I love that idea. And I know there's going to be quite a few listeners out there pretty excited about that idea as well. So that's fantastic.
They have to ask very easy questions.
Yeah. Good. Well, we will see what we can do about that.
They should ask me what color horse I like to ride.
There you go. Do you have a favorite, by the way?
Not easy, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I had many favorite horses. I had many.
Yeah.
Write about them. My last book is all about writing my most important teachers and horses.
Yes.
It's basically a thank you note to those people who gave me the what insights and the knowledge I might have. So anyways, like it describes my horses and what I liked about them.
Yes, perfect. And I believe that's the book that you sent to me, correct?
But you don't have to read it because I don't follow it up with a written examination of multiple choice.
Oh, well, perfect. Well, I do plan to read it. I've leafed through it, and it looks like it's going to be a fantastic read. I can't wait to get to it. It's being on the road makes it challenging for me to get through many books, but I will certainly, I appreciate you sending it, and I will certainly be reading through it for sure. All right, fantastic. So Charles, if I could have you hang on the line for me here for a minute, I'm going to follow up and end our live broadcast right here, and then we can chat a few more minutes if that's good for you.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, gang. I want to thank you so much for tuning in for episode number 41 of Talking About Horses. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate you giving Charles and I your ear. Please remember that if you've missed any of it, you can access the full broadcast through Facebook, YouTube, from iTunes, or by streaming directly from our website by accessing the Talking About Horses page from the Education drop-down menu. Through whatever platform you're listening, please be sure to give us a rating, a comment, a review, and a share with your friends. Your word of mouth and support is the fuel for this fire. Thanks so much, gang.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Talking About Horses with Patrick King. If you enjoyed today's show, please leave a review and subscribe. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit pkhorsemanship.com. We'll catch you next time.